All right. Welcome back, guys, to part two of our Thursday night book review. Just to catch you guys up, we are going over The Souls of Paradise. I'm going to give it a second for everybody to start joining and such, and then we will be on our way. Okay. So, for tonight, we are going to talk about chapters 2 and 3 of The Souls of Paradise, like I stated before. We'll be going through this every Thursday until we complete it, and at which point then we will be going over our second book, Paradise Reborn. Now, last week we talked about the prologue and we talked about chapter 1, and I gave you guys some insight as far as how those things were created and how I came up with the ideas and the inspiration for the book in general. So for this time, we are going to be talking about chapter 2 to start, and again, we will be going into chapter 3 after that. Now, chapter 2, it's called An Apple a Day. In this chapter, Stella, our main character, is talking with her therapist, Dr. Clark, about dreams that she had that occurred in the prologue. Hello, everybody. In her dream, she's asking her, or in the therapy session, she's asking her psychiatrist about, can you talk to people that are deceased, and what are dreams exactly? Just trying to get a basis on why she had that sort of premonition earlier in the book. So Dr. Clark explains to her a little bit about, how dreams could be sort of wishes, or, it really depends on your belief in the whole subject matter. And during their session, at the conclusion of it, Dr. Clark winds up prescribing Stella a brand new medication known as pseudochloroquine, or also PC3. It's supposed to help deal with some of the trauma that Stella was going through and stuff like that. And, Stella takes it and then she leaves after her appointment. So, in this, like I said, the chapter is called An Apple a Day. The reason why I named it that is, the old saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And Stella's whole basis on what she's thinking is she doesn't want to go to therapy. It's not something that she truly believes in. It's just more of a thing that was ordered to do so when she was discharged, that she had to keep up with her therapy. So, I named that as a nod, basically, that, like, you're kind of doing it just to make sure that you can keep going in your normal life. Now, a couple of the Easter eggs that I want to talk about with this chapter is this is the first time that you were introduced to Dr. Evelyn Clark, who is Stella's psychologist. The character was loosely based on, as I stated last week, someone in my own life. But again, I'm not going to talk about that just yet because I don't want to give away any spoilers or anything. But when we start getting to the last 2 chapters of the book, I'll go into detail and explain where that came from and why, that character is so important. But you'll see through the reading, if you haven't read the book yourself, our chats here and stuff, you'll start to pick up on why Dr. Clark is so important and vital to not only this book, but the entire series as a whole. In this book, or in this chapter, Stella is talking about her anxiety medication that she's taking and stuff like that. That was based off of my own that I was taking at the time. For a good year and a half, I was taking clozapam, and it seemed like it was working at the time to deal with anxiety, and I found out that it was actually alleviating the symptoms to begin with, but eventually the symptoms would come raging back. So it was almost like postponing it. It wasn't really like taking care of it the way that it should. And, Stella talks about in there how, she's using it basically as a crutch because she's yet to find a way for her to successfully get rid of all of the anxiety and stuff in her life, which prompts Dr. Clark to step in and tell her to try this new experimental medication that she's had success with. Within that, they talk about religion and stuff like that, and you're going to see throughout the book that there's a lot of talk about religion and the belief of religion on whether God exists or doesn't exist, and all different perspectives on the subject. Stella talks about it in the sense that she said she was never a religious person, and the thought of it kind of like made her feel eerie to think about like the afterlife and religion and stuff. So again, these characters are based off of different points in my own life, and there was a time where when I was younger, that's exactly how I felt about it. I mean, I was raised Catholic, but I felt kind of off about the whole thing on whether it was true, whether it was not true, and then it took a while for me to come around to it, and then find my place in all that. So that her talking about that stuff was based off of just my younger years and how I felt, because I didn't know how my life was going to turn out. I was living very fast when I was younger, from like 16 to 22, so I didn't really know what was going to come of it. I mean, there were times where I didn't even think I was going to make it out of it. Like, it was just a crazy, crazy point in my life. So, I wanted to add that into the book as a nod to those times in my life. Now, Stella, when she's talking to Dr. Clark in it, she wants to ask her basically about, and basically let her in on what her dream was, and try to get some insight as to why she would have had that, and why it felt so real, and why on numerous occasions now she's seen glimpses of like her sister, who's passed away. And at the same time, she doesn't want to open up and say it because she's so afraid that if she says the wrong thing, that she's going to wind up being institutionalized. And again, in my early days with therapy and stuff like that, I felt the same way, that if I had spoke what was on my mind at the time, that, I would be looked at like I was crazy or something like that, because I didn't accept the diagnosis of borderline at the time. So I was just like, the thoughts and ideas I had in my head as far as like, my own personal beliefs and how I felt about just things in life and relationships that I was going through and stuff like that, I basically felt like I had to walk on eggshells and kind of like tiptoe around the actual truth. And, it was once I actually walked away and took a step back and life calmed down, I was able to accept, the outcomes of things and stuff like that, and actually start being honest with not only myself, but, with therapy and everyone else around me. And it wound up paving the way to, the healing and stuff like that. So it was very beneficial. But, I threw that in there because at the time when I was writing this book, there was a lot of things like I felt like I couldn't do or write about and stuff like that, because, I was afraid of how I was going to be judged or looked upon when it came to that. And the last thing, Easter egg in this part of the chapter, is pseudochloroquine. So the pseudo, I just added in there. I didn't really have a basis behind that other than it sounded like a medical term. And chloroquine, that was actually the name, I forget, I should have wrote it down, but the during when COVID was going on, the medication that they were giving out was something chloroquine. And since I started writing that part during the height of COVID, I gave that as a nod to the time that was going on and stuff like that. Now, the medication itself, the whole purpose behind it is that you're supposed to be able to take this medication, and it works like Prozac almost in your system. It builds up a tolerance and stuff like that, and then let's just say you were in a situation where maybe you were hit as a kid. Maybe it was with a belt or something. And, you get over that part of your life, you become an adult, but maybe you hear the snap of a belt, and it brings back a tidal wave of memories that you once forgotten. And it's based off of Marcel Proust's work. When he talks in his first novel of that series, he speaks on behalf of, he was sitting there eating a mandolin, which is a type of cookie. He was dipping it in tea and stuff like that. But when he bit into the cookie, it brought back a tidal wave of memories that he thought he'd forgotten from his childhood. So the idea kind of shaped from there. If that you could bring back all these positive memories that you thought you could forget about and stuff like that, well, people have all this negative trauma, whether it be from, a young childhood or PTSD or whatever the case may be. It's always being conjured up. So what if there was a way that a medication could kind of linger in your body and sense that heightened reaction from you and then essentially eliminate it? You live through the trauma basically one last time, but your body recognizes it almost like a disease or something and cuts it out of your memory. Now, the theory that goes with that as well is that if you're erasing parts of your beginning parts of your life, aren't you essentially erasing who you are now? Because if, let's just say, it was something like you were getting hit as a child or something like that, didn't that ultimately, even though it was bad, shape you into who you are today? So if you erase the building blocks by taking this medication, you could be essentially erasing who you are. Or you're creating gaps in your psyche and your memory, and you're erasing your past, and you don't have the complete story. It's almost like reading a story starting on like the third or fourth chapter and not even knowing how it begins. It doesn't give the building blocks that you need to create the ultimate story, in which is your life. So that is where that came in, and you're going to hear a lot about PC3 in the entire series. As we get further into it and stuff like that, we'll dive more into it, and I'll explain more things about it. But that, in a nutshell, is Chapter 2. So now we can talk about Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is called Him. In this, we are introduced to Stella's ex-boyfriend, Charlie, and she describes their prior relationship, and she explains how it concluded, which also led to her first time at self-harm. Charlie is trying to apologize during this. They're talking to each other outside of the Reidsville General Store, and at that point, Charlie's just expressing his feelings for Stella, but at the same time talking about, how regretful it was what he did and how bad he wants her back. But, she's hurt. She doesn't want to hear this stuff. She's done. She's over with it. She's been avoiding him. Like, she didn't want any of this stuff to happen. So, Stella gets a little angry and she fires back at him. And then, she goes to walk away. And at that point, when she walks away, she realizes that, like, nobody's around at this point. And, it leads us into the following chapter. So, with that being said, so you get the intro to Charlie. And when you're talking to Charlie, or when Stella's talking to Charlie, she's describing him and stuff like that. I actually based Charlie off of one of my ex-girlfriends that I used to date when I was in the 8th grade. I based her, I made his persona basically, like, obviously from a female to a male, but, their interests, likes, and things like that, and, that's where the basis of that character actually came from. So, the part of Charlie that was about me was, like, that he had all that regret for making stupid decisions in his life, and, that is where that ultimately plays in. Now, the other thing that's in this is Stella's anger is based off of, like, her anger towards Charlie and stuff like that when she's talking is based off of a relationship that I was in, where I was cheated on a bunch of different times, and I had that anger, and I had that animosity, and, I never got to, like, showcase it or anything, I more bottled it up and stuff, whereas to Stella's more vocal, she's, like, in his face telling him, like, this is the way it is, like, I'm not having this, you messed up, like, I've been trying to avoid you, like, you need to stay away from me. And, he doesn't get the hint, so she obviously had to just put it down. And, she felt bad about it and stuff like that, but, it was something that needed to be done, because you can't just sit there and allow it. And there's actually one passage from the book that I wanted to read that showcases that, I think, very well. So, when Stella is arguing with Charlie, she actually, in the heat of the argument, I'll read a little bit before the part I was talking about, she says, "He looked as if he were about to start to cry, and I was not going to let him off that easy, as he deserved the rage he created. He deserved to feel what I felt, and he wanted to talk to me so badly now, and now he could deal with it. I began to walk away. I could feel the anger increasing inside me, engulfing my soul in the fires of pain and punishment. I looked at him one last time while walking away, and I said," and this is the part I was talking about, Stella says, "At the end of the day, no one needs to go to sleep at night wondering why they weren't good enough. So stop feeling sorry for yourself and own up to your mistakes and move on." Now, the reason why I put that in there is because when I was going through my last relationship and stuff like that, and I was trying to come to terms as to why I was being cheated on and stuff like that, that's the feeling that I was having when I was going to bed at night. I mean, I was, like, hardly sleeping at that point, and, I just kept wondering to myself, like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, why am I going to bed wondering why I'm not good enough? Like, why should be wondering, like, why you're doing what you're doing? But, I took the blame for it, even though, there was things that were my fault in the relationship, but, like, you didn't deserve the way that turned out. And, I mean, it was very bad. So, to have that mentality when you have to get up for work the next morning, or just in general, when you're laying down at night, nobody needs to lay down at night wondering why they weren't good enough. It's probably the worst feeling in the world, and I would never wish it upon anybody. But, the times make the person. So that happened, and it pushed me to where I am now, but it also needed to be added in the book as well as a nod to that point in my life, because, you take these different chunks of yourself when you're making these books, and you put them in there, and, you make it so that the readers who have gone through similar things find them to be relatable, because they're real things. They're real feelings. So when you can actually put that in there and have somebody reach out and say, wow, like Stormy just said in the chat, that you can relate to that. It's a good thing, and it makes people want to read the book because they can feel that emotional connection and stuff. And you'll see as we go on, when it comes to book 2, I put a lot more emotion, a lot more character development and stuff like that with these characters. I mean, The Souls of Paradise was just my first stab at, making a book. But Paradise Reborn, it was honestly, it was beyond what I expected it to ever be. The people that have reached out to me and stuff like that about how much they relate to the characters and how much they really like them, and to see, in the past when I was writing this earlier in the year, I was knocking out 2 or 3 chapters a week, and Stormy would jump on Thursday nights with me, and we would have what we called, Stormy story time, and I would read to her what I wrote for the week. And just the emotion it was bringing up in her, obviously watching the books go from start to finish, but also, relating to the characters and feeling the characters and watching them go through this week after week after week, it really brought it together, and it made me have a lot more confidence in my writing because I saw the emotions it was generating. Then to look, it seems every couple weeks on Amazon, I'm getting more reviews that way too, and people are describing it, and I would say 90% of them are positive, and just the things that you guys are saying about it, that you're relating to the characters, that you really like it, that you can't wait for the 3rd book. I mean, it's an inspiration. I mean, this week alone, I've added 17 pages to the 3rd book. I'm almost done with the 2nd chapter. I have about, I think, 50 pages done as of today, and it is starting to move along. It's not going as fast as the 2nd book was, but it is going, and it's only because I want to make sure that this one ends the right way. I want to make sure that we cover all the bases, we fill in all the, gaps in time and, what's going on in the story, and basically put these characters to end in a satisfying way. And I think that, this is actually going to work out that way. I think it's going to turn out really well, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So, with that being said, I think what I'm going to keep doing is each week to kind of roll through it, because The Souls of Paradise didn't have a super amount of Easter eggs, unlike Paradise Reborn. Paradise Reborn is just filled. And I mean, it's double the size of the book. I mean, if you even compare them in size, you can see, it's vastly different. So to get us through The Souls of Paradise, we'll do 2 chapters a week, all the way up until the final chapter, which should be sometime, I believe, in November. I think we should be done with it. So, I hope you guys are enjoying it. If you haven't checked out the book yet, you can go on Amazon. It's only $1. You can get the Kindle version right there. Obviously, if you want the hardcover books and stuff like that, it is a little bit more, and that's only because Amazon basically sets the tone. They take most of the profit and stuff like that because I went the self-publishing route, but, I wanted to be able to get my work out there and get a feel for what people thought about it. And if it was something that was going to turn into something more major, then at that point, I could seek out a private publisher and stuff like that rather than the self-published way. As of this morning, we hit 9,000 followers, and it's absolutely incredible. So thank you guys so much. The likes just keep coming in. The feedback keeps coming in. You guys reaching out to me through private message and stuff like that. It's absolutely incredible. I'm trying to get back to all of you in a timely manner. I'm also trying to follow you back in a timely manner, but, as you know, with TikTok and stuff like that, you get the shadow ban if you're following too fast, which is what I incurred today because I had so many likes come in. I mean, I think it was 800 likes came in the last, day and a half. So I'm trying to keep up with it the best I can, and if I haven't liked you back yet, I will get to it. It's just, I have to wait. But if you guys have any questions, throughout any of these chats, anything like that, you feel free to post them up, and I will answer them as they come up, or at the end, whichever, we come up with. If at any point, to any of the book talkers out there that could be watching, I invite you guys to want to join in, talk about your own books, also chat about this book, and it'll give all of us a platform to get our work seen and heard. It's Chucky says, yeah, what's your story, what you do? An author? Yes, I am a dual published author. I published The Souls of Paradise and Paradise Reborn, both of them within the last year. I released them on Amazon, and so far they are doing pretty good. I looked at the last sales and stuff like that just this morning. For the month of August, we basically sold a book every other day of the entire month. The genre is psychological horror. So basically the synopsis for the book would be, if you could erase all the past trauma in your life by simply taking a pill to get rid of it, would you take it? And if you did take it, wouldn't you essentially be changing who you are and the building blocks of where you came from? Now you see in that what winds up happening is that the main character Stella takes the pill as prescribed by her therapist at the time, and within that you start to see the horrors unfold throughout her life. Some, real life horrors, and at the same time some things that she's experiencing because of the medication. And you start to see how it unravels, which leads us into, the second book, Paradise Reborn, where it all comes full circle, and you get to see some really, really crazy things happen, and how it affects not only just Stella, like in the first book, but how this medication is affecting an entire town. So, like I said, I guess the actual thing would be psychological horror, as far as type. So, well, that was all the Easter eggs for tonight. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm looking forward to our Tuesday night healings. This Tuesday coming up, like I said, we have two very extreme topics to talk about with our borderline continuance. One of them is self-harm. The other one is extreme emotional swings. They are going to be very, very deep conversations, so if it's something that could bother you or make you go into a bad place or anything like that, I would suggest treading lightly as far as watching the video. If you can't make it, because we do it every Tuesday for the healing, every Thursday for the continuation on the books, if you can't make it on Tuesday, I have the link on my TikTok page, also on the Facebook page, everything for the YouTube, and I post this live chat when I'm done with it, and it downloads and everything to the YouTube channel, so you could always catch it at a later point in time if you didn't happen to catch us live. Now, that is going to be our next time that we meet up. Like I said, if there's any book talkers out there or anybody in general that would like to jump on and discuss the book, maybe you read it or maybe you have something else you would like to discuss, I invite you to reach out to me in the direct message so we can set up a time and a subject that we're going to be talking about and stuff. And I would love to have you guys on here. We can make the chats a little bit longer. We could change it up a little bit about different things. I'm all ears. These are the two things that I was requested by people who've read the book and stuff like that want to hear about. And I'm more than happy to talk about these things and do that for everyone. Not only like the Tuesday healings, not only is it, from what I've been told, helping other people, but it also helps me as well to vent and, get that out there and then relate to other people that are going through similar struggles. So like I said, Tuesday we'll do the healing. Thursday we'll be back here with chapter 4 and chapter 5, where it gets a little bit more crazy for Stella, and, you're going to start to see, the dramatics of the story start to kick up a notch. Again, I'm trying not to give spoilers away to anyone who hasn't read the book. I'm just trying to give Easter eggs and stuff like that as far as I came through it. But if you wanted to get the book, if you jump on Amazon tonight and you buy it for $1 on Kindle, you could basically read along with us. Because, Thursday I'm going to be doing 2 chapters at a time. And the first book, the chapters are only about 10 pages long. I didn't really stretch them, whereas to, the second book, they're like 20 to 25 pages long. So, you could always follow along with us and give your insight on what you guys think, because I always love hearing your guys' input. I know it means the world to me to get that kind of feedback and to have this platform to be that immersed with my audience. Like, it's a wonderful thing. It's a humbling experience. I truly, truly love it. And, I just want to thank you guys so much. We have here, at least in America, I know we have some international followers and stuff. We have Labor Day weekend coming up.